where I'm looking specifically now at planning and managing work. So in this part of the content, we're really looking at organization of work, negotiating work, clarifying work expectations, managing time, and prioritizing. By the end of the lesson, you're going to know what a work practice is, and you're going to know the role of quality assurance in successful work. You should understand why planning is important to successful projects and the impacts that poor work practices have on jobs. And you should be able to I'm going to get you to sequence a construction project. So I'm going to give you a list of construction trades or work that needs to get done. I'm going to ask you to sequence them in order using your project management skills and your understanding of normal work practices and what sorts of things need to happen in what order when building a house. And second thing I'm going to get you to do is to respond to the past HSC question where you describe how builders and tradespeople can ensure quality work and ethical work practices on a construction site. So we get started. Successful planning. Before anything else, preparation is the key to success. That planning stage is super important. If you plan well, then you will succeed. Okay? And planning includes things like organizing your tasks, prioritizing the time that you have to make sure the tasks get done in the right order and based on their level of importance. That you also clarify the individual needs and the group needs, and you try to align those together so that you can achieve success in both areas, as well as clarifying responsibilities of each individual and each individual team or each group of people. What we mean here is we're talking about, if we're planning a project, building a house, for example, we need to understand the needs of each individual tradesperson. So we need to understand that the electrician can't do their work until the wall framing's gone up. The wall framing can't go up until the concrete slab has been completed. The concrete slab can't be completed until the site surveying has been completed, and excavation's been completed, and the formwork's been completed. So there's a whole heap of understanding around each individual team and their needs. When we clarify our responsibilities, we say, okay, well, you're going to be responsible for this aspect of the job. So, John, you're our surveyor. You're going to be required to complete all the surveying, and it needs to be done by this time. So provide a deadline, clarify their responsibility, and let them know that once you have completed your work, you need to report back to the project manager, so the project manager can then activate the next sequence in the team. So that's what we mean by understanding the tasks, organizing them, prioritizing them, clarifying the responsibilities, and getting them all sorted. The next sort of thing we start to look at then is, okay, what do we do when we need help, and how do we ask for help? So it's not good enough just to do a dodgy job because you didn't know any better. You should actually ask your supervisor in the first instance if you need assistance with something. So if you're an apprentice carpenter, for example, and you've been asked to do something you're not sure, it could be quite unsafe for you to do it without further instructions. So definitely ask your supervisor. Their job, they are paid specifically to assist you and to teach you and to train you. But even if you are a qualified tradesperson, you're coming across something you've never seen before, you shouldn't be ashamed to go and ask someone to improve your skill set. You ask once, you learn it, prove that you can do it, and then you know for life. So seeking assistance is a really valuable process. Work practices and work routines, I've got another slide on, but it's really where we're thinking of the standard ways that things get done. Okay, and lastly, contingency plans. Successful planning considers contingency plans. It considers what's going to happen if it rains and the project is delayed. What's going to happen if this building material is not available and we can't get it anymore? So contingency plans are those sort of backup plans that we create just in case. So a work practice. A work practice refers to the way things are done in an organization. These are standard processes. We create standard processes because it helps us create efficiency. If we are efficient, then things are getting done better and they're getting done faster and they're being done while complying with the standards, the policies, procedures, safety expectations, etc. Some examples of work practices that you might need to consider in the construction industry are your ability to adhere to safety procedures. So, for example, if you needed to climb onto a roof to do some roof restoration works, One of the work practices would be, well, before you even start that process, you check that you've got your safety equipment. Do you have your ladder? Do you have your harness? And do you have a point where you can anchor your harness to? And if not, what's the procedure you're going to go through? So one of those standard work practices are those safety procedures for each of the scenarios that exist. We have standard work practices around when directions are given to you by your supervisor, you're expected to go and do it. And if you have a question, you should ask your supervisor. There are standard work practices around your personal presentation standards. So making sure, particularly in our scenario, that you're wearing long sleeve, high visibility, that is not made from a polyester fiber, but made from a natural fiber, that you're wearing steel cap boots, that you're wearing your safety goggles. Okay, these are those standard presentation standards that interweave and intertwine with the safety procedures. There's the ability to manage your workspace, the expectation and the requirement that you keep your workspace clean, your tools are put away when they're not in use, you don't have lots of scraps of timber lying around the floor, you don't have materials stored in walkways, and your heavy items are stored appropriately so that your workspace is actually managed in a safe way, but in a way that's most efficient. So the tools that you need are nearby, making sure that the tools you don't need are out of the way. We also talk about the expectation around assisting co-workers. There are times when you might need to lift or hold up a large piece of lumber that you can't hold on your own. 2 people might be required. So the expectation that you're going to go and help your co-worker, and that reciprocal relationship of when you have something that needs help with, you would expect them to assist you as well. Now, what happens if we have poor work practices? Well, if we have work practices that are poor, we're going to have inefficient workplaces that take longer to do things or do things at a more expensive rate. This can have financial implications to the company. So if you're delayed, you might have to pay a penalty to your client, okay, financial cost there. You might have to pay additional labor because of extra time required to do the job. You might have to repair something that was done ineffectively, or maybe a little bit of a dodgy job was done, and so you have to go back and repay for the materials, repay for the labor to get that all done. That all comes into those financial costs. You've also got your reputation that the clients have. Okay? How is your company's brand and company's image going to withstand dodgy work or work that's not being done effectively? And what's that going to look like for the clients that you have? Are you still going to have work at the end of the month or at the end of the year? If you've got no work because you've got no clients, then people are going to start losing their jobs. So we're now starting to get that snowball effect where it's no longer just one small mistake has caused $10 worth of damage. A small mistake may actually have long-term implications for a company and for the employees in that company. One of the other effects that poor work practices has is the missed opportunity for personal growth. So if you're not out there asking for assistance, then you run the risk of not developing as an individual, and therefore you're never going to become a better construction worker. So poorly planned policies and procedures lead to tasks being done inefficiently. That results in things not being done within acceptable timeframes. Then there are financial costs. This leads to loss of money, loss of clients, loss of organizations and reputations. It's all negative. Okay? The biggest downfall is when we don't have the opportunity to upskill our employees because of poor work practices. Because when we have our top level workers, our more experienced workers either retire or maybe they lose their jobs or decide not to work anymore, if we don't have that knowledge being transferred down to our junior workers, our apprentices and our junior laborers, then the business can no longer continue because we don't have the right skill sets. Now, to help you manage your times and tasks, we need to think of a few things. We need to understand what our principles are. Okay? Our principles are that we want to get our construction project done in the shortest time possible without compromising quality. It's a bit of a principle. How do we actually achieve that? Well, that's our technique. We're going to achieve that by putting on additional workers. We're going to achieve it by having good practices and processes in place, making sure our materials are ordered in a logical manner, that we don't have days where we're just sitting at the site waiting for the next next bit of material to arrive. Okay, so we've got our principles. Okay, they're the guidance concepts, and the techniques, the specific things that we do to make sure that our projects stay on time. Okay? One of the key points that comes in both of these is your ability to prioritize. The things that are most important are closely linked to your principles, and the way that you get them done, again, that's your techniques. It's not just about getting things done in the shortest amount of time, though. Time is one key aspect of building projects, but the other key aspect is quality. Every single worker in the construction industry plays some sort of role in the quality assurance process. So each trade person relies on each of the other trades to complete their work to a high quality so that they can do their own work at a high quality. For example, if we spoke about a house project again and we start at the very beginning and a concrete slab is laid down and the concrete is not level. It's flat, but it is not level. What are the future consequences in that poor quality slab being positioned and laid and finished in poor quality to the future trades? Well, it's going to make it difficult to put wall framing up. It's going to make it difficult to put floating floors up. It's going to then make it difficult to ensure that the foundations of the house are actually secure and whether we can put second levels on and all sorts of things like that. Might mean that doors and windows don't fit in correctly anymore because wall frames are no longer level, okay, no longer straight. If I gave you a specific example, I used to own a house that had a concrete slab that it was built on. The concrete slab was not level and it used to have carpet. Now, when you have carpet on concrete that's not level, it's not really too much of a problem. You don't really notice too much. We decided we wanted floating floorboards. Now, floating floorboards, if your floor is not level, there are significant problems around the boards getting damaged, not fitting together properly, or having bouncy air gaps underneath them where there's no support underneath to hold the weight of the person standing on them. So the consequence of the slab not being level when the house was originally built was a $5,500 exercise to go in and put in self-leveling concrete to re-level out the slab before we could put the new floor coverings in. So that's an expense that the client pays as a result of poor quality construction. Now, what are the impacts back to the original company? I would never get that original building company to lay a slab for me again if I know that they can't build concrete slabs level. Okay. And how do you achieve quality? We say that we want good quality products, but how do we actually achieve them? Well, one of the key ways is specification sheets. You would know from each of the practical tasks that we've done in this course, there has been a specification sheet assigned to each of them. This includes things like our tolerances, okay, the plus or minus millimeter level or angle degree that we allow for a project to be considered acceptable quality. Your specification sheet is designed to be measurable so that the client, the building certifier, can look at your specification sheet and look at how work has been completed. And if it doesn't meet those requirements, then it is not quality work. We also use checklists. Checklists are used where we go through to do inspections or audits and we check off a range of different things. It might be things like at the end of the house, if you've watched an episode of The Block, or if you've been lucky enough to experience this at the end of a project while on work placement, you go through and you put little blue dots all over the wall or colored dots on the wall, little stickers to indicate everywhere that you found a potential quality problem. That's a result of a checklist where someone's gone through and said, okay, what are the walls like in terms of their quality? Is the paint even? Can you see the nail holes? Are there any chips? Are the walls level? Are they flat? Are they smooth? Okay, so you've got all of those sorts of things you can start checking. When we think about shelves that might have been put up, we might start thinking, are the shelves level? Are they secure? Can they hold the weight that the specifications says they can? These things would be on a checklist. Now, at the end of a project, the certifier goes through with their checklist to make sure that it does meet those systems. One of the other ways that we can help to achieve quality is by complying with the NCC, the National Construction Code. Now, this is that document that outlines the specific requirements around how things need to get done. the standards for the building and construction industry in Australia. Okay? All states and territories are on board with this National Construction Code now, and there are 3 volumes in there. There is the commercial building, there's the residential building, and then there is plumbing. Okay? 3 different volumes that are included there. This is in the National Construction Code, and it sets out those basic standard expectations for construction workers in the industry. One of the other ways that we can achieve quality is with high quality tools and high quality materials. Getting bang for buck. We talk about if you have cheap tools, then you run the risk of having faults in the way things are done. You might not have equipment that is running as straight as it should be. It might be doing rough cutting. It might not be sanding appropriately. Whatever the tool is, if you don't have good quality tools, you're not going to get good quality work out of it. Likewise, if you don't have good quality materials, you're not going to get good quality work out of it. So using cheap paints, if you're using cheap cements, or if you're using materials that are not up to the code expectations, then you're not going to have that high quality work that's required. One of the other ways to achieve quality is to have workers that have a high quality skill set. Are our workers skilled, and are they professionals, and are they experienced at the work that you're expecting them to do? If it is my first time ever cutting a piece of timber with a tenon saw in a workshop, it's never going to be as high quality as someone who is experienced on the tools using a tenon saw on an everyday basis. Okay? So the worker's skills plays a really big part in quality. Now this is particularly evident when we come to things like painting, when we come to things like concreting that are permanent and in place and visible to the client. There are plenty of things that don't get seen, okay, the electrical work or the plumbing work, and it's not as obvious to the client when the skill set is high or low. But when things go wrong, then it becomes very apparent to the client that the worker wasn't aiming to achieve quality or didn't have the skill set to achieve the quality required. Now there is an Australian and international standard. It's the standard 9001. This is the Quality Management Systems Standard. This is the standard around what a quality management system should look like, how it should work, the sorts of procedures and processes that it should include, and that will help guide workers on achieving quality work. So a construction company like Lendlease, for example, would have a quality management system. Their quality management system would include things like specifications, tolerances, checklists, compliance with the national code, minimum expectations around tools and materials. And that's all in the quality management system, which is outlined in the Australian New Zealand Standard International Standards Organisation 9001. Okay. So that's the end of today's lecture. It's been on the quality assurance processes that exist inside of the construction industry. There's a little bit of work for you to do. I posted that on Google Classroom, and good luck.